Moscow insisting it's trying to fix a broken U.S.-Russian relationship. On Monday, Donald Trump said he was resuming weapon shipments to Ukraine days after the U.S. said it was halting arms transfers. And just yesterday, Trump said Putin was all nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless. Take a listen.
That was a war that should have never happened, and a lot of people are dying, and it should end. And I don't know, we get a lot of bullshit thrown at us by Putin. For you want to know the truth, he's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless.
We can now bring in our international affairs editor, Kethevane Gorjestani. Kethevane, good to see you.
Hi.
Has Donald Trump really had a change of heart towards Vladimir Putin?
Well, look, clearly there is growing frustration from Donald Trump, and what you heard there from yesterday is probably the most outspoken sign of that frustration against the Russian president. But it's not new. You've seen increasingly Donald Trump saying negative things about Vladimir Putin. At the end of April, if you remember, there was that post on Truth Social, Vladimir, stop, when Russia was bombing Ukraine. At that time, Donald Trump had said that he thought that maybe Vladimir Putin was tapping him along. Then at the end of May, there was the hint at possible sanctions against Russia. It wasn't followed by any action. But then you had that call on July 3rd with Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump after that call saying that he was not happy with President Putin at all. So you're really seeing gradual frustration and really negative attitudes from Donald Trump towards the Russian president. And that also has been increasing as the Russian strikes have been increasing on the ground, because we've seen those barrages of missiles hitting Ukraine. And Donald Trump is seeing those images, and what he wants is a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. So there are two reasons maybe for Donald Trump's growing frustration. One is that he wants a deal. He doesn't really care what that deal entails, whether it's favorable to Russia or favorable to Ukraine. He wants a deal because he's the deal maker. And initially, he saw Vladimir Zelensky as pretty much the biggest obstacle. Now he sees Vladimir Putin as the main obstacle to that deal. And at the same time, you have a push among hawks within his administration, within Congress, as well as foreign leaders, especially Europeans, who have changed a little bit their strategy. And I talked to people in Congress as well as diplomats, European diplomats, who said that they're no longer so much focusing on the sort of principles of why you have to defend Ukraine and the sovereignty of Ukraine, and they're really putting more pressure on the idea that Donald Trump is being played by Vladimir Putin, because they know that Donald Trump's character will react to that, will react to the fact that they believe that Putin is not really acting in good faith in this matter. And this growing frustration with Vladimir Putin at the same time is happening with a sort of more positive attitude with Vladimir Zelensky. Recently, you saw Donald Trump saying he had a good call with Vladimir Zelensky, that the Ukrainians are brave, and now announcing that he's going to be sending more defensive weapons to the Ukrainians. One big caveat to all of that is that we know that Donald Trump can change his mind very quickly. So this is all for now, and we'll see how that goes in the coming weeks.
Because that's the thing. He says he wants to resume sending weapons to Ukraine, because just a couple of days ago he said actually we're gonna halt weapons shipments. So once again, it's a flip-flop.
It's a flip-flop, but this time this is a pause that Donald Trump seemingly may not have known about. He was not the one directly to announce the halt. He's the one who said we are sending weapons. Let's take a listen to another exchange with a reporter that happened during that same cabinet meeting yesterday.
Last week, the Pentagon paused some shipments of weapons to Ukraine. Did you approve of that pause?
We want to put defensive weapons because Putin is not treating human beings right. He's killing too many people. So we're sending some defensive weapons to Ukraine, and I've approved that.
So who ordered the pause last week?
I don't know. What did you tell me?
So interestingly, when he turns and he says, I've approved of those shipments, he's turning to the person to his left, which is Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. And there are several U.S. media reports now confirming that it is Pete Hegseth himself who did not inform the White House of his order to pause those weapon shipments to Ukraine. Not the White House, not the National Security Council, not the State Department, meaning Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, who's also the National Security Advisor. Where does that possible halt come from? Basically, what happened is that around the NATO summit a couple of weeks ago, Donald Trump asked the Department of Defense to review the stockpiles of weapons within the United States, because obviously with the weapons being sent to Ukraine, but also the weapons being sent to Israel to defend themselves. This was the time when Iran was also bombing Israel and vice versa. And following the attacks of the Houthis, where the U.S. had to defend itself there too, they've been burning through a lot of these missile defenses, if you will. And so they wanted to get a review of how much was actually there. And so there was that review that was ordered, but that was not a green light to actually halt it, which is what the Department of Defense did, probably with the recommendation of the Undersecretary of Defense, Elbridge Colby, who's a longtime critic of sending weapons to Ukraine. Pete Hegseth is also not so much in favor of doing that. The White House, for now, is saying that it has full confidence in Pete Hegseth, that they didn't really get into what happened there. What they're saying is that Donald Trump has said they want to send defensive weapons. That's what's going to happen. But it's not the first time, apparently, that Pete Hegseth has gone without telling the White House to possibly halt weapons to Ukraine. It happened in February. It took 2 days for the White House to realize, so it was kept a little bit hush-hush. Didn't come out until recently, but it does show a sort of chaotic process within the Trump administration, especially within the Department of Defense under Pete Hegseth. You had Signalgate, you had all the firings of his... He survived Signalgate, he survived firing all of his top advisors, but there are not many people who are recommending what to do within the Department of Defense. And you're also seeing a shrinking National Security Council, which usually deals with those type of coordination between Department of Defense and White House. And that's how possibly you get to this point. But he survived Signalgate. He seems so far to be surviving this, but it does create a seemingly a sense of chaos within the White House, where Donald Trump doesn't know what is happening.
But he's very loyal to Donald